thank you for allowing this time for us to have a intimate conversation. I have a few questions lined up for you so that we can get to know you and Coptic Queer Stories together better. So the first question I have for you is, can you share your family's migration story from Egypt? When did your family leave? Where did you all end up?
Yeah, sure, of course. So my family left Cairo in the early 80s. They landed in California, in Southern California, sort of just like by accident. They didn't know they knew one person here. Um, but my dad had family in Nashville. My mom has family in Canada, but they just sort of landed in California for some weird reason. Um, but yeah, so they landed here in the early 80s and then were instrumental in sort of building out a local Coptic community because there was nothing out where they landed.
That's beautiful. And kind of want to get more into your own background and how you ended up initiating Coptic Queer Stories. So, what motivated you to start this initiative? And honestly, can you just introduce your work and what you've done so far?
Yeah, of course. So Coptic Queer Stories is sort of a multi-pronged effort. It's a website, it's a meeting space, it's a social media handle. It's a platform that really kind of brings people together to talk about LGBT issues within the Coptic diaspora and the context, sometimes in Egypt as well. Um, and yeah, just a little bit of backstory going not too far too far back, but it was around 2017 where it was a now infamous Mashrour Leila concert had happened in Egypt. And that same year, end of that year, the Coptic Church organized a conference titled Volcano of Homosexuality, something like that. It was like 300 clerics getting together to discuss how homosexuality was a mental illness. And so right around that time, a couple folks in my immediate Coptic community, there was just a couple suicides connected to the events of that time. And so I had originally thought about making Coptic Queer Stories and as an art project where it was going to discuss these issues more conceptually. Um, but over the course of that short period of time, just like the end of 2017, moving in 2018, with all those things happening, it felt important to just kind of be a little bit less, less conceptual and more grounded in people's experiences. So just pivoted a bit, started connecting with people and asking to see if we could highlight their stories. So we started off doing interviews, and one person led to another and sort of built out that way. And then it's grown now to a bunch of different things, which is great. But that was sort of, yeah, our origin story.
I do wonder though, how has your work been received in your immigrant communities?
Yeah, good question. I should also say that it's an effort that's not just mine. I can't do it alone. There's so many people involved. And there's not one experience, right? I think the project has really been received very differently depending on who you talk to. But by and large, we've gotten a ton of support. There's been some people who have been quiet observers, some people who have been a little bit louder in their in their disapproval of our efforts. But mostly people are really coming together to kind of, I think it exists within a larger environment as well. It's really not just about queer issues, because of the intersections that people live at just naturally, right? So maybe people are immigrants, maybe people are queer, um, feminist issues. There's just a ton of activists who really kind of saw this initiative as part of their intersectionality. So yeah, we kind of straddle the line between immigrant communities, people in diaspora, and U.S. born or Australian born, or gosh, we talked to so many people all around the world. Egyptians that are born in other places. So it really kind of there's not one sort of reaction to it. To answer your question.
So inspiring. I did a little bit of a digging on the project itself, and I realized that in the past couple of months, especially in the summer, there were some events that you held. Can you tell us a little bit about that? If there are any new events coming up?
Yeah, for sure. So my background, I was a visual artist for a while. Then I went to grad school for creative writing. So I have a creative background. I'm also a researcher and designer more recently. So one event that we did this summer was basically a interactive, I think we call it interactive toolkit. But essentially, it's a workshop where people co-created their own meaning, brought their own meaning as well to prompts that I prepared, also in collaboration with community. It was also part of my thesis work in my grad program, where I looked at the influences and consequences of American Egyptomania since the 19th century. And I sort of adapted that for Coptic and queer framework for that workshop. And it was lovely. It was a mixed group. It wasn't just Copts or Egyptians. We had a bunch of folks join, which was amazing. Everybody from the Swana region, might have a different story to tell when you show a picture of stuffed grape leaves. Or what, I don't even remember some of the prompts now or the images, but some of them were really specific to being Coptic and some were a little bit more broad. So in a mixed group like that, when we're talking about, maybe some jarring imagery that would mean something very specific to somebody who's Coptic and queer, and then somebody who isn't, where does that conversation go, and how do we sort of make meaning with where we're at now and not get stuck in our history or our historical divisions, that sort of thing. So that was an effort just to have dialogue, have conversations, and people tuned in from all over. It was a collaboration with a great organization in Canada called Marginalized Majority. Shout out to them, they're great. Yeah, and so we're hoping to do more, but it was just one of many, hopefully.
We honestly can't wait to promote your work and feature workshops on our social media as well. You did mention a little bit about your background, so I wanted to dig in a little bit more on that. So how does this personal or professional background shape your work?
I am a naturally curious person. I ask a lot of annoying questions. And so interviewing people and connecting with people kind of comes naturally for that part of Coptic Queer Stories. But I've also been an activist involved in other efforts for a long time. I've learned a lot from people who've come before me, from other groups. I think that not centering myself or my own artistic practice was really important when I embarked on this particular project. Mostly because I was just learning the framework of design, not of fine art, and design really kind of helped kind of let me see outside of myself and sort of asking how can I build something for other people and with other people rather than my own. I kind of got sick of my own story, to be honest. I did a lot of identity work with. I still, oh my goodness, I still obviously right. But I think with this particular project, just trying my best to really ask people what they want, how do we kind of build collectively and with other groups not just our own stories. I think that's really central, even though it's you know, it's largely about individual interviews. I think, and that's where I started because of my background, that sort of thing. I think it's kind of taken on a life of its own, which is really lovely to see. There's like this invisible mutual aid network that has really blossomed and developed into like very tangible ways that people are building community. So yeah, I just really want to stress that it's more than an art project. Like it's more than like a question, it's an organizing space. People have developed their own offshoots, their own friend groups. They've developed their own initiatives after meeting through this platform. People really help people both like financially, creatively, etc. And that's not to like say without Coptic Queer Stories that wouldn't happen. But I just think it was like perfect storm, perfect timing for people to like need to meet each other. And then, you know, this platform sort of sparked that. And in a lot of ways, yeah, in a lot of ways, I'm still figuring out what the hell we're gonna we're gonna look like in the future. And I think that's largely gonna be dictated by who's involved and what we need to do, right? You know, a lot of our stories aren't super, I mean, they are remarkable, but they're very unremarkable at the same time, right? Like conservative religion is anti-queer, and, you know, we're in isolation. And I, of course, don't want to like minimize that story, but I don't want to center our struggles. I do want to focus on some of the ways that we're actively living in joy. And I also want to highlight things that might be hard to talk about, right? Like, so how do we de-orientalize our Copticity? How do we decolonize our Copticity? What does that mean in Egypt, in our dogma, in our politics?
You must be super proud because honestly, I am. It is incredible. Like you started this project at a very critical time, especially after the Mashrour Leila concert, building this community, letting it grow and letting it be what it wants to be. It's incredible. So with that, I want to learn more about what you found most rewarding with this line of work, and what were some of the surprises that you faced along the road?
One of my favorite surprises has been how involved my family's been in like supporting this effort. It's really kind of been a personal journey as well as like a collective journey. So I think like shout out Mama, who's been like a dope ally and a dope kind of grounding person for me and for a lot of other people who've been involved. That was very unexpected. And along that thread, just connecting with old friends, people who I've grown up with through the project. You know, there's been a lot of haters, a lot of trash we're not going to talk about, but there's just been like so many lovely surprises with people that have come out of the woodwork and who've really like, I think there's just a deep desire for people to connect, and so I think that was you know, just a lovely thing to be surprised by. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's funny because like Egypt migration's largely about archiving work, but there's so much else that goes into archiving our histories, our stories. It becomes alive in a different way. And I think, yeah, those things have become so rewarding when your own ideas of how things work are challenged, and then, you know, things aren't stuck in time. Some things are stuck in time and very hard to move, but largely, like, it's an activated space, it's a meeting space, it's a building space, and it's oftentimes not really like been about solving things, right? It's really just about having a supportive environment to ask questions and to build together, and to really have a collective reckoning of what the fuck has our history really dictated, what is still internalized that we can shed and challenge, and how do we kind of future vision?
Activist work can be incredible, but there are some challenges and obstacles along the way. So do you care to share a little bit about that too?
Basically, when there are patterns within maybe a communication style or a cultural or historical way of dealing with issues that might come up, those roads are really, really established, right? They're grounds that have deep tire marks. And so you go from 0 to 1,000 very quickly. And what that might mean is, difference of opinion, or just different lived experience, different class, those sort of things. And that's the grassroots gritty part of this effort, is just trying to stay true, trying to quiet the noise around the pressures of folks who kind of have been taking the middle ground, and trying to play to both sides, but also try not to burn every single damn bridge. And I think every time I'm confronted with a situation where I'm like, okay, should I be safe or should I fuck it all up? Every time it's really paid off to just fuck it up, right? Just burn it. Sometimes you just need to burn it down and start from scratch. But yeah, it's sometimes been a challenge just to kind of be radical and to really, really push for more than just representation or just what's the fucking word people use? Tolerance, or whatever. When we're talking about these questions, like what does it really look? What do we need from allies, and how do we work with allies and not do the emotional labor, and how do we build with people, in spite of emotional labor? So it's just like a constant balancing act. But again, when in doubt, suck it up.
So with that, I know there were a lot of like words of wisdom in what you just said, but if someone watching us is trying to find a similar path or start a similar initiative, what advice do you have for them? And also, is there something that if you had another go around, you would do differently?
If I had another go around, what I would do differently is I would have started earlier, and I would have done it with people like right from the get-go, and build it as a collective from the ground, instead of like trying to convince people to help when you're burned out, and then it taking off from there. But so that's one thing. But I think, by and large, like if you're interested in doing anything like this, oral history projects, collective art making, just asking questions together, start local. There's always going to be people in your little local network, as long as you could prioritize your safety. I think there is an avenue to at least start a personal practice. I think what I will say to this is that my art practice and my writing practice are largely like, it's not super important for me to show work anymore, or publish a ton. I'm very selective now with my creative work, because for a long time I was really working within white institutions, and kind of it wasn't like personal work anymore when it got to that point. So I think you can do this work internally first, right? Use it as a way to like slow time down, to be self-reflective, and just try your best to engage in whatever way that looks. That would be something that I think is a good lesson that I learned, instead of just trying to proclaim knowledge. Really consider your own personal growth as the work.
So super excited for your future work. Please do let us know of any other projects that you have in the making, and we would love to promote it. And that's the end of my questions. Thank you so much for giving us this time to talk about Coptic Queer Stories. Such an inspiring project, honestly.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind. I appreciate your taking the time as well.